Have you ever felt as if your faith was being tested? That is the experience of Daniel in the Bible. Welcome to the Bible Storyteller, where the ancient stories of Scripture come alive with timeless power. Today we journey into one of the most inspiring stories of faith, courage, and divine intervention, the story of Daniel. It begins in 605 BC. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon conquers Jerusalem and carries off the best and brightest young men from Israel into captivity. Among them is a young man named Daniel, a noble, intelligent, and full of promise. Daniel's story is not about status, it is about faith under pressure. He was an Israelite, taken into a foreign land. The day was scary. Babylon's soldiers had been holding Israel under siege for years. It was a battle they saw coming, waited in hope for a solution to come. But it did not. They had sinned before God and he let them to their enemies. They had failed to repent when God told them to. They served foreign gods and the true God let them be defeated by their enemies. The fall of Jerusalem was imminent. One day, dark clouds gathered over Daniel's peaceful village, and a sense of fear swept through the people. Soldiers marched into the land, bringing chaos and confusion. The world Daniel knew was turned upside down, and nothing would ever be the same again. A mean and powerful king from a distant land sent his army to conquer Israel. The soldiers captured Daniel and many others, forcing them to leave their homes and everything they loved behind. Daniel and his friends were taken as captives, not knowing what would happen to them or if they would ever see their families again. It was a frightening and uncertain time. They had to travel a long, hard road to a faraway land called Babylon. The journey was difficult and exhausting. Daniel and his friends walked for days and nights, crossing hot deserts and strange lands. They missed their homes and wondered why this was happening to them. But through it all, Daniel tried to stay hopeful, remembering the stories of God's faithfulness. Babylon was very different from Israel. It was a huge, bustling city with tall buildings, grand palaces, and busy marketplaces. The people spoke a different language, wore different clothes, and followed different customs. Everything felt strange and unfamiliar to Daniel. The city was filled with noise and excitement, but Daniel felt lost in the crowd. The people there didn't know or love God the way Daniel did. They had their own beliefs and traditions, and they didn't understand Daniel's faith. Sometimes Daniel felt alone and out of place, surrounded by people who didn't share his values or his love for God. It was hard to be different, but Daniel remembered what he had learned back home. In Babylon, people worshipped idols, statues made of wood and stone. These idols could not hear, speak, or help anyone, but the Babylonians believed they had power. Daniel saw people bowing down to these statues, offering gifts and prayers. It made Daniel sad to see so many people putting their trust in things that could not love or care for them. Daniel often felt sad and homesick, longing for the land he loved and the people he missed. He remembered the hills of Israel, the laughter of his friends, and the warmth of his family. Sometimes he wondered if he would ever see his home again. But even in his sadness, Daniel tried to stay strong and hopeful. But Daniel knew, deep in his heart, that God was with him, even in this strange and distant place. He prayed every day, trusting that God would never leave him alone. Daniel's faith gave him comfort and courage, and he believed that, no matter how far from home he was, God's love would always be with him. Even though he was in a new place, Daniel kept trusting God. Daniel was given a new name, Belteshazzar. He was with other young Israelites named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel and the three young men were trained in Babylonian ways. He was a quick learner and very smart, but Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. Daniel 1:8, Gap 2:S. Even in a world that tries to shape us, we can stand firm in our faith. He was a quick learner and very smart. He learned everything about Babylon. He even learned their language. The king of Babylon saw that Daniel was a wise and honest man. Daniel was given an important job. He helped the king make good decisions. The king trusted Daniel and listened to his advice. Daniel was brave and always told the truth, even when it was hard. Nebuchadnezzar had a troubling dream. None of his magicians could explain it. He demanded that they tell him the dream and the interpretation, or face death. But Daniel prayed. Daniel told the king his dream of a great statue of gold, chest of silver, belly of bronze, legs of iron, feet of clay, and a stone that destroyed it. Daniel explained, "You, O king, are the head of gold, but a kingdom will come after yours. And in the days of those kings the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed." A bold prophecy. Nebuchadnezzar was amazed and promoted Daniel. God reveals mysteries to those who seek him. Daniel's companions in Babylon found themselves in trouble with the king. The king built a giant gold statue. It was as if he was living him dream already. He demanded they all worship the gold statue. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused. They would not eat defiled food, and they would definitely not bow to a foreign god. They belonged to only one God. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us. But even if he does not, they were thrown into the fire. But the king sees 4 men walking in the flames. The fourth is like a son of the gods. They walked out unharmed. Nebuchadnezzar praises their God. Faith that's willing to say even if not is powerful. Years passed. A new king reigned, Belshazzar, the descendant of Nebuchadnezzar. One day he hosted a feast using sacred cups from the Jerusalem temple. Suddenly a hand appeared and wrote on the wall, Mene Mene Tekel Uparsin, Daniel 5:25. The king was terrified. Daniel was summoned. Mene, God has numbered your days. Tekel, you have been weighed and found wanting. Uparsin, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That very night the kingdom fell. Pride goes before a fall. God's justice is sure. In the heart of the ancient kingdom of Babylon, a powerful king ruled over a vast land. This king, known for his authority and grandeur, was surrounded by advisors and officials who often sought his favor. One day, these officials, driven by jealousy and cunning, devised a plan to trap one of the king's most trusted advisors, Daniel. Daniel was known throughout the kingdom for his wisdom, honesty, and unwavering faith in God. The officials noticed that Daniel's loyalty to his God was unshakable, and they decided to use this against him. The officials approached the king with a proposal. They suggested that he issue a new law, a decree that would elevate his status even further. The law would state that for 30 days, no one in the kingdom could pray to any god or human except the king himself. Anyone who disobeyed this law would face a terrible punishment. The king, flattered by the idea and perhaps not realizing the officials' true intentions, agreed to the proposal. He signed the decree, making it official and unchangeable according to the laws of the Medes and Persians. The punishment for breaking this law was severe and frightening. Anyone caught praying to anyone other than the king would be thrown into a den filled with hungry lions. The den was a dark, terrifying place, and the lions inside were fierce and always ready to pounce. The threat of being thrown to the lions was meant to strike fear into the hearts of everyone in the kingdom, ensuring that no one would dare to disobey the king's command. News of the new law spread quickly throughout the city. People whispered about it in the markets and in their homes, their faces filled with worry and fear. Many wondered why such a harsh law had been made, and some were afraid for their loved ones who prayed to other gods. The atmosphere in the kingdom changed as people became anxious about what might happen if they were caught breaking the law. It was a time of uncertainty and dread. Daniel, however, was not like everyone else. He had always been faithful to God, and he knew in his heart that this law was wrong. Daniel understood that true loyalty belonged to God alone, not to any human king, no matter how powerful. He spent time thinking about what he should do. Should he stop praying to God to save himself from danger? Or should he continue to do what he knew was right, even if it meant facing the lions? Daniel's faith was strong. He knew that prayer was his way of talking to God, thanking him for his blessings and asking for guidance and help. Daniel believed that God was always with him, watching over him and listening to his prayers. He decided that he could not let fear stop him from doing what was right. No matter what the law said, Daniel knew he had to keep praying to God, just as he always had. Every day, Daniel followed his usual routine. He went to his room, a quiet place where he could be alone with God. The room had windows that faced toward Jerusalem, the holy city, and Daniel would open them as he prepared to pray. This was something he had done for many years, and it was a special time for him to connect with God, no matter what was happening in the world around him. 3 times a day, Daniel knelt down and prayed to God. He thanked God for his goodness and faithfulness, even in difficult times. He asked God for wisdom and strength to face the challenges ahead. Daniel poured out his heart in prayer, trusting that God would hear him and help him. He did not hide or try to keep his prayers a secret, even though he knew that others might be watching and waiting to accuse him. Daniel was aware that his actions could make the king angry and put his own life in danger. He knew that the officials who had created the law were looking for a way to trap him. Still, Daniel chose to remain faithful. He continued to pray openly, trusting that God would protect him, no matter what happened. His courage and faithfulness were an example to everyone who knew him. In the face of fear and danger, Daniel made a brave choice. He chose to obey God rather than men, even when it was scary and uncertain. Daniel's story reminds us that true faith means trusting God and doing what is right, even when it is difficult. His unwavering commitment to prayer and to God's commands would soon lead to one of the most remarkable moments in his life, a moment that would show the power of faith and the greatness of God. In the grand city of Babylon, Daniel had become a man of great respect and honor. He was wise, honest, and always did what was right, which made him stand out among all the other officials and advisors in the kingdom. The king trusted Daniel more than anyone else, and often turned to him for advice and guidance. But not everyone was happy about Daniel's success. Some men who also worked for the king grew jealous of Daniel's special place in the royal court. They whispered behind his back, casting suspicious glances his way, and their envy grew stronger with each passing day. These men couldn't stand to see Daniel being praised and honored by the king. Every time the king showed Daniel favor, their jealousy burned hotter. They felt overlooked and unimportant, and they began to plot against Daniel, hoping to bring him down and take his place. They watched Daniel closely, searching for any mistake or weakness they could use against him. But Daniel was faithful and did his work with integrity. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't find anything wrong with him. As they continued to watch Daniel, they noticed something about his daily routine. Daniel prayed to his God 3 times a day, every day, no matter what. He would open his window toward Jerusalem and kneel down to pray, giving thanks and asking for wisdom. The jealous men realized that Daniel's faith was the only thing that set him apart, and they decided to use it against him. They remembered the new law the king had just signed, a law that said no one could pray to any god or man except the king himself for 30 days. Gathering together in secret, the men whispered and schemed late into the night. They knew that Daniel would never stop praying to his God, even if it meant breaking the king's law. "This is our chance," one of them said. "If we catch Daniel praying, we can report him to the king and finally get rid of him." The others nodded in agreement, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. They were determined to trap Daniel, no matter the cost. Early the next morning, the group of jealous men marched into the palace and stood before the king. They bowed low, pretending to be loyal and concerned for the king's honor. "Your Majesty," they began, "we have something very important to tell you." The king listened, unaware of their true intentions. The men reminded him of the law he had signed, the one that could not be changed, not even by the king himself. With sly smiles, the men accused Daniel in front of the king. "Your Majesty," they said, "Daniel, one of your most trusted officials, does not obey your law. He continues to pray to his God 3 times a day, even though you commanded that everyone should pray only to you." They pointed fingers at Daniel, hoping to turn the king against him. Their voices were filled with false concern, but their hearts were full of malice. The men insisted, "He prays to his God, not to you, O king. He is breaking your law and must be punished." They wanted the king to believe that Daniel was a threat to his authority, even though Daniel had always been loyal and faithful. The men hoped that the king would have no choice but to punish Daniel, just as the law demanded. The king was deeply troubled by what he heard. He liked Daniel very much and knew that he was a good and honest man. The king realized that he had been tricked by his own advisors, but the law he had signed could not be changed. He felt trapped by his own words and the rules of the kingdom. The king spent the rest of the day searching for a way to save Daniel, but he could find none. As evening fell, the king sat alone, filled with regret and sorrow. He didn't want to punish Daniel, but he felt he had no choice. The law was clear, and everyone was watching to see what he would do. The king's heart was heavy, knowing that an innocent man was about to suffer because of the jealousy and wickedness of others. The king ordered his guards to arrest Daniel. They took him to the lion's den. It was a deep pit, a dark and scary place. The hungry lions roared inside. "Oh no," thought Daniel, "what will happen now?" The king felt very sad. He did not want to throw Daniel to the lions, but it was too late to change his mind. He hoped that maybe, somehow Daniel's God would save him. The king ordered his guards to arrest Daniel. They took him to the lion's den. It was a deep pit, a dark and scary place. The hungry lions roared inside. "Oh no," thought Daniel, "what will happen now?" The king felt very sad. He did not want to throw Daniel to the lions, but it was too late to change his mind. He hoped that maybe, somehow Daniel's God would save him. The heavy stone was rolled over the den's entrance. Daniel was all alone in the darkness, but he was not afraid. He knew God was with him. He closed his eyes and began to pray. Meanwhile, up above, something amazing was happening. God sent an angel to protect Daniel. The angel stood before the lions. He was so powerful that the lions became calm and gentle. They did not hurt Daniel. The next morning, the king rushed to the lion's den. "Daniel! Daniel!" he called out, his voice shaking. "Are you still there?" He peered anxiously into the darkness. To the king's astonishment, Daniel answered, "Yes, your majesty, I am all right. God sent his angel to protect me from the lions. They did not hurt me." The king was amazed. He couldn't believe his ears. Daniel was alive and well. The king ordered his guards to lift Daniel out of the den. He was so happy that Daniel was safe. Then he punished the bad men who had tricked him. He realized that Daniel's God was real and very powerful. Daniel's story reminds us to be brave like him. He listened to God even when it was difficult. He showed us what it means to have faith and trust in God. Even when we face problems, we can remember Daniel. God is always with us, just like he was with Daniel. We should never be afraid to do what is right. We can trust God to help us, no matter what challenges come our way. Daniel's story is a powerful reminder for all of us. Even in a world that doesn't know God, we can shine brightly for him. Let's be brave like Daniel and trust in God's love every day. Daniel's courage and faithfulness were not just seen in the lion's den or the fiery furnace. In the quiet moments of his life, Daniel experienced something extraordinary. God gave him powerful dreams and visions about the future. These visions were mysterious and sometimes frightening, but they carried messages of hope and warning. One night, Daniel dreamed of 4 great beasts rising from a stormy sea, each representing powerful kingdoms that would rule the world. But then, Daniel saw God, the Ancient of Days, sitting on a throne of fire, and a Son of Man coming to receive everlasting authority and peace. This vision showed that although earthly empires rise and fall, God's kingdom will last forever. In another vision, Daniel saw a ram and a goat clashing in battle, symbolizing future empires that would shape history. He also received messages about difficult times ahead, but always with the promise that God's people would be rescued in the end. Daniel's visions weren't always easy to understand, even for him, but they remind us that God knows the future, and he is in control of history. Daniel's prophecies have inspired hope and faith for generations, pointing to a time when good will triumph over evil. Through his dreams and visions, Daniel teaches us that God reveals his plans to those who trust him, and that no matter how uncertain the future may seem, God's promises are sure. Let the story of Daniel inspire you to be courageous in the midst of trials and tests. May your faith not waver, but you rise strong and resolute, like Daniel's companions, even if he doesn't save us. Subscribe to the Bible Storyteller for more. Comment, like, and share.